What this is going to be about is the new pilot ships, the new items that we have with the Iconian reputation. We have the a couple of build requests, and I want to have a more general talk with you guys about something. Now, I want to make a few points clear to you guys. First of all, if you play a game, right, I want you to realize that there are two very basic fundamental things to think about when you're playing a game. Number one is, and this is probably the most important part about it, is you need to have fun with what you are doing. And this sounds somewhat obvious, but I want you to every now and then possibly take a step back and think about if you're actually doing what you do like, what you do enjoy. And if you are at a point where you just do it out of habit and where you don't actually like it anymore, I want you to think about if that is actually a good investation of your money, or your time is what I mean. I mean, the problem is people only have a limited amount of time, right? And if you do something just because you have always done it, that's not a very good thinking on this part, I'd say. So if you're playing a game, you need to have fun with it. That is the most fundamental thing. If you don't have fun with it, you need to think about doing something else, I guess. And then you need to find out what is fun to you. I mean, winning is something that is not always there. I know people play the game because some people play games because they like winning. And I see this a lot on games like League of Legends, on Counter-Strike, on World of Warcraft Arena, wherever you look. People will get really super mad and when they lose. And this is an interesting step because it mostly happens in the mid-range of players. The casual players that really don't care about winning or losing, they can't really be bothered, right? If you lose, you win some, you lose some, it's not a big deal, you can try again. If you are in the mid-range, you for some reason think that you deserve to win because you're an experienced player and everyone else is worse than you, and therefore you should always win. If you don't win, there is something else that is holding you back. And there are numerous or basically unlimited reasons to come up with why something is not really working out. While at the top range, you usually get over the ego part. And this is really what it comes down to. You need to get your ego out of the way if you want to be a very good player. Because at some point it's not about coming up with excuses, but it's about acknowledging the mistakes that have been made and coming up with a solution to them. If you do professional, not really professional, but if you do serious raiding, for example in World of Warcraft, right, there is always a good progression going on in those guilds that try to achieve really good kills and everything. Or if you look at StarCraft 2, like, or 1 even, these people are super much into all that is going on. Like, they try 10 hours a day and they really want to make an effort out of it and they put all their time into it. And that's fine. And when they make a mistake at the very high levels, usually they just acknowledge that they made a misplay, that they didn't do what they wanted to do, that they followed the wrong strategy. That is something that can be fixed. However, if you fall into this trap of coming up with excuses because you already know all the answers, like, you know, you only lost because your teammates couldn't do whatever you asked of them, you only lost because something random happened and you couldn't really prevent it, that's usually a misconception of something else that is the underlying problem here. For example, in StarCraft, if you don't scout your enemy and then get crushed by something you didn't see coming, it's not because you did not lose because you got crushed by those broodlords or whatever. It was because you made a mistake 10 minutes earlier on not scouting properly. However, the brain wants to come up with reasons that are easily connectable. So it's these OP broodlords being overpowered and you can't do anything about it. And that is a misconception that happens quite frequently. It happens to everyone at some point. But you always have to try to stay out of that habit of making that an actual excuse. So, Ryan, should I take my best friend's mom out for dinner? Possibly. I don't really know her, so I can't really tell you. Okay, so 2 major things about playing. If you don't have fun with the game anymore, you need to think of what you can do differently, or if you just don't want to play the game anymore. Have been cases for that all the while. Second part is don't get your ego in the way. And this is a really big thing. I don't think you can really get in all the aspects of this, because if you look at not only at PvE but also PvP, right? That is where most of the frustration comes from. When people get their egos colliding, basically. You have 2 players, only one can win, right? Only one. And it's not necessarily the better one. There are always chances and always positionings, and it's not 100% plannable. And then both after that will argue how they should have won if they are into the ego thing, if they think that they are the best players in the game that possibly can exist. And they cannot enjoy the game because they hate on each other. The one guy used cheap, cheesy technology that he shouldn't be allowed to use because it's cheating. And the other guy only had luck because he cloaked at the right time or something. I don't know. Whatever you can come up with. And understand that at this point, it's not about having fun with the game. I'm not saying you should be psychologically detached from the game. You should have fun. You should celebrate victory, and you should think about defeat as not a good thing, but more of a productive way. Like, how can I improve? What did I wrong? And can you actually be friends with the enemy? Because, even though you can be enemies on the battlefield in whatever game, you could also be friends when the game is done. And that is something that I see a lot on STO, people really hating on each other while they try to play together. Understand that even PvP is playing together. Of course, within the limits of the game, you play against each other. But if there's no one playing with you, not even on the enemy team, then you cannot play at all. Even PvP is highly dependent on other players. Alright. I guess that's it for the first part here, the short personal rant about when or why you should play. Let me see what's going on in the chat. I think it automatically does it, Frankie. The announcement on the stream, if someone follows, is actually an automation thing. I can't really see when it's happening, so, and I don't have my cell here all the while. I hope you are okay with the little pop-up. What's going on, everyone? Good evening, the unknown admin. Felician, Salakanar 1990. Iconian. Since this is life lessons with Ryan. Oh my. I'm just trying to give everyone my perspective. If you don't care, if you don't agree, if you are against it, I'm okay with that. It's just my opinion. I'll leave to go on vacation tomorrow. Oh no, Cookie, you can't do that to us. Riza, no. I'm going to visit my sister. That sounds like a good plan. Alright. Okay, so that has been the general thing. So let's continue with this one first. So we have the new Iconian reputation going on right now. You get the marks out of Backhand Elite or Backhand's all versions. You can do Gateway to Grethor, you can do Herald Sphere, you can do the Brotherhood of the Sword, another ground one. of which I recorded a video which I can show you guys later. But first let's have a look at the new items, and I think I logged into the wrong tune, so I'll just hop over to the other one. So as with the previous patches, when you unlock the tiers of the reputation, you unlock a new set of items. You get a deflector, an impulse engine, shields, and a warp core. Now this is on Tribble, and the new set is called the Iconian Resistance, and it does not have any set powers. Okay, we need to give it a second to load because I, for a pretty good fact, know that it does possess set powers. Okay, so this is the set powers. For 2-piece bonus, gives you distribute shields, applies shield regeneration to each facing for 5 seconds. This is not too much of an important thing. The energy augmentation actuator. Now this is where it gets interesting. When firing energy weapons, 5% chance to plus 15% all energy damage for 8 seconds to allies within 10k, stacks up to 3 times. Now there's one problem with this. The 15% all damage is only base. So this is like half attack console, not even. It's not a bad thing, but it's not super awesome. It's just pretty decently good, especially since it applies to all your teammates. It applies to allies within 10k. So these 45% damage, if it stacks up properly, really helps out your entire team. Therefore, I can at this point see a good chance that this will be taken over the Nukara 2-piece and ROM engines, which we saw earlier, being the standard DPS layout. The 4-piece bonus is an activation ability. It has a 1 minute 54 seconds cooldown, which should be 2 minutes if you don't have anything slotted. It gives 33% all damage for 30 seconds, some maximum hull HP and some flight speed, which is only minor. But the 33% also is only base damage. So since you have to equip all 4 items, there's a decent chance that I will not be using the 4-piece power, but only the 3-piece and an elite core with the energy drain resistance. So we need to check on how that really turns out, but that is my guess right now. We will be going for the 3-piece, not going for the 4-piece. The items themselves are actually pretty decent. Compared to the other ones, we now do have quite a defensive layout as well. I shouldn't really bring this up to show just the item. The new shield array, for example, gives you all energy damage resistance to shields 20%, which is pretty high on its own, and it removes 1 debuff every 10 seconds. Now, if you think about the Borg missions, when you get assimilated, when you get a plasma fire, all this sort of stuff will be removed every now and then, and that really can help you out when you're out of tag teams or hazard emitters for some reason. So I do see some value in this, and the 20% all resist is pretty good. The engine gives you flight speed, turn rate, defense increase. Defense is not that big a deal, but you also gain the 100%. When you are at 100% throttle, you gain 8.8 energy damage resistance. That might be okay. I mean, it's not quite as offensive as the Nukara set. You do gain some defensive value out of this while even getting the offensive value. And this is now the important part, I'd say. The Iconian Resistance Deflector gives you 17.5 kinetic damage resistance. And if you don't stack anchored like I do, let us check out how these values change for just putting in the deflector, waiting for the last stack of anchor to drop. So we are at 24.1% as opposed to 12.7. Okay, so this is like 12% of kinetic damage resistance. And I would always suggest you spec into kinetic resist and everything, because you usually die to torpedoes. Only on very rare occasions you will actually die to someone shooting you with plasma arrays on warp missions. Usually the torpedoes will crit you like crazy, even on the new missions. Grathor is one where I usually get killed by all those torpedo spreads, and there's not much you can do about it except for going for kinetic resist. So I like that stat on the deflector array really, really much. The shield power setting bonus is pretty nice. Structure integrity, shield systems, that is all okay. Nothing too special, but I like the defensive value of this set. Ryan, you can not do that to us. We all miss you too much. I will be there. It's only Cookie that's going. Hey Ryan, what's the item next to Omni in your aft weapons? I think you are talking about the heavy biomolecular phaser turret for the 2-piece bonus with the hydrodynamics compensator for the 7.5% real damage to phaser and disruptor. Turret. Felicia, the gold one is, so this one is the omnidirectional phaser array, and this one is the Tempest railgun that is always on the ship. You cannot remove it. It's not especially good. Well, lots of epic items. It's okay. Look at all the shiny epic gear. Guys, you need to keep this down a little. What's going on? Shield reduces energy damage. It's not energy resistance. Come on. Reduces all energy damage to shields. Is that a different tooltip? Reduces all energy damage to shields. They both sounded quite identical. I am not sure. Alright, so that's it for the new space set. I see definitely some potential here. The warp core gets amp if you make it ultra rare, but it's not generally that good a warp core. So I'll probably try sticking with the plasma integrated for now. But we will see how that really works out in the end. The new ground set gives you similar abilities. The 2-piece gives you 5% armor penetration and maximum hit points, so that's not really that strong. The Radiant Subatomic gives you 33% all damage for 30 seconds. Again, being base damage, so that relates on ground to more than in space. It's worth more, but it's once again not amazingly overpowered, and you have to use all 3 items, which doesn't allow for a fleet armor anymore, so you will lose the crit D and everything. I'm not sure if I really would do that. So I guess that is it with the new items that we have with the Iconian reputation. So let me jump over to show you guys a new ship. So yesterday we had this patch with the pilot ships. I was sorta excited because I thought you could make them look like the Defiant. Apparently you cannot. I am a little disappointed at that, to be honest with you. I really would have hoped for that. So this is my tune that I claimed the ship upon. Or I actually got the Federation 3-piece because I wanted to test out the new 3-piece set power when I heard that it increased cannon damage, and they didn't announce on the blog how much that was. I was pretty excited, hoping for something actually reasonably good, so you could actually fly cannons again. Promise it only is base damage. So this is what the ship looks like that I clicked together. This is a combination of all the 3 ships that you can get. It's not looking too bad. I sort of like it. I mean, from the front angle it's okay. From the back I don't really like the impulse engines here, which is why I would like to make it look like a Defiant, but yeah, I guess we can't have that. So all these ships are similar. This is now the tactical one, which we shall take as a basis to compare the other ones. If we look at the stations, we get the Commander Tactical along with Pilot, Lieutenant Commander Tactical, Lieutenant Engineering, Lieutenant Sci with Pilot, and a Lieutenant Universal. That is a pretty good layout. It's basically a Kumari or Chiral thing with an additional Lieutenant Universal instead of the Ensign Universal. You get the 5-2 layout, you get 5 tactical consoles, 3 science, 3 engineering. For the science variants, you take out this Lieutenant Commander Tech and get a Lieutenant Commander Science. For the engineering version, you take out this Lieutenant Commander Tech and get a Lieutenant Commander Engineering. And there honestly are quite a few good choices here. If you want to have the Lieutenant Commander Sci for the Gravity Well on puck runs, that can really help you play with the Gravity Well to capture those spheres so you don't fail the mission. Then you basically lose this ability here, the second Fired Will, and probably want to get rid of the Fly Her Apart for a Fired Will 2. So that would look something like this. And then you would have the Gravity Well in here. If you were going for the engineering version, you would take away this ability, do the same thing up top, and get an Emergency Powered Weapons 3, which is a fair damage increase. Or if you go for the tactical one, you can get one pilot ability pretty easily without screwing over your build. You could also use the science versions if you wanted to. Or if you have a very short run and really know what you're doing, you could also get 2 of these, get the only one Fired Will, hope for reciprocity, and tactical initiative to reduce your cooldowns. The only really good abilities damage-wise that I can currently see are the Form Up, which teleports you to an allied target within 10k and gives you a damage increase of 5 to 20% real. If you fly away too far from the target that you teleported to, and too far means 5k here, the effect will get removed, so you need to stay close to him. And the Fly Her Apart is also a very good ability. You get the you lose 4% of your hull every second while it's running. It has a duration of 15 seconds max, and for every second you have it on, you gain 2% all damage. That one also is a real percentage, and I'll just show you quickly how that looks when you use it. It counts down here, you lose some parts of your ship and you take damage all the while. Obviously out of combat, our passive hull regen is insane. The only problem with this is it makes your camera do this strange effect of how it makes everything more longer, and when the effect is cancelled, it suddenly jumps back. I just wish you could disable it. But that is a good way to optimize on your go down fighting. Like if someone or something hits you to like 40%, and then you can use this ability to drop additional HP to get a better GDF out of it while moving to the sides on ISA, for example. So there's definitely some use for the ability, and the damage increase is fairly good while increasing your speed, so you can even use it to get onto the other flank or other side of ISA, for example, if you need to get somewhere in general. Then also you have the additional pilot ability. This meter is filling rather quickly, and I'll just quickly reduce graphics settings so it stops this crap. Okay, so if you double tap one of your keys like A, W, D, or S, it does this turnish thing to the sides. It gives you a short speed burst forwards, or it does something where it thrusts you backwards like this. And as you can see, it refills pretty quickly. So this is fun to use, but it's not really that strong. I mean, it helps out on mobility, and it gives you a short immunity to damage. I think it's for all of them, yeah. The tooltip reflects how you're immune for a very short period. If you want to change the activation, then you can click this little icon here and do something else. Okay, so it should, this one is just the visual, and this one is if you can double tap it or not. Okay. Generally, the new ships are okay-ish. Their layout is pretty good, I guess. For Federation ships, it's not really something game-breaking. Therefore, or for being game-breaking, it would require at least one more thing that makes it special. It doesn't get sense analysis, it doesn't have a hangar bay, it doesn't get cruiser commands, it doesn't get radar flanking. Any of these, or a Romulan battle cloak, even if it's Confederation battle cloak, any of those would have really helped to make this ship really viable. The way it is, it's more or less a new fancy ship, but you don't really need it. The consoles of the ships themselves don't look overwhelmingly good. They have pretty much some bonuses as you would expect. Nothing special. The two-piece is 10% crit severity, not really helping out to close the gap between Romulans and Federation either. 24% recharge time reduction to pilot bridge officer abilities, which are okay, but you don't really need the reduction, I'd say. I never really thought, oh, if I had this or this reduction out, that would really help. As most of the abilities don't really relate to something that increases your damage or even your overall performance, I don't really see how this is too much or worth too much. Accuracy being minuscule at 2.5%, and the 33% cannon and turret weapon damage. Now this could have been amazing if it was real damage percentage, then you might actually fly cannons again, but you do have to give up 3 consoles for around 5 to 6% a real damage increase, and I don't really see us dropping 3 consoles for 6% because every console is contributing more than that basically already. When is the Q&A portion of the stream? I have known how tall you are, and I think Jay wants to know your shoe size. What the freak? My tactical ship's name is Blackberry. Do a barrel roll. I love the pilot maneuvers. They are so much fun. Yeah, they are fun to execute, but and that really comes down to having fun with the game. Clearly, doing this is sort of cool, right? Out of the performance perspective, though, I can't really tell someone to go buy this ship because it's not a special thing, really. The cooldown was shorter. The cooldown is short enough, believe me. I am 6 feet. Okay, thank God I checked my follow or something. Alright, so 1 or actually 2 more things along with sarcasm detector parking right under us. The starship traits that you get, I unlocked every single one just for you guys, and I want to show you now what they do. The stay on the target shoots a torpedo at your target every 4 seconds for 3000 kinetic damage, and that is not really that good. If you use abilities like Attack Pattern Omega, this one actually gets increased, which means it's not entirely bad. And if you put in the command as secondary, you unlock the Expose Weakness instead of Pilot. If you go for a command, you get Expose Weakness, which debuffs your enemy for kinetic damage. Now this could potentially be a good thing. Only problem is if you use this, the game will probably lag to death. Second thing is you don't really have a trait to drop because all of these are exceptionally good. All hands on deck, Reciprocity, Improved Pedal to the Metal, and Supremacy are all really, really strong. Like 20% on pedal is pretty crazy. Supremacy obviously reciprocity, all hands on deck. Like, what would you exchange for 3000 kinetic damage? Structural integrity overcharge. This one scales with your base engine power and increases your hull regeneration. And I'd say that this is only the base regeneration, it's not your hull healing. I might be wrong on this. Even if I am, I don't really see what we would drop for this, so yeah. The only interesting one that I actually was somewhat excited about is the armor penetration against your target. Let's just slot this for a second so we can actually see the benefit of it. And the benefit is actually 0. And people now think that if they go to full throttle, it will put them at the scale with speed max 15%. They would expect that they get the 15 out of this, right? However, if I go to full speed, I only get 6.4. So let me reduce my speed to around 25, a little less. Come on. Can we do it and get as close as we can to 25? Come on. Okay, the mouse accuracy on this clicking thing is not very good. What I'm trying to tell you is that at 25 you get 5 out of this. And if you increase your speed to around 50, you get 10 out of this. Just a little more. Just like that, 10 at 50.07. And if you go even faster, at a maximum of 75, you get the full 15% bonus out of this. Obviously, evasive and everything that puts you above this will cap out. But really, if you fly around with 75 to get the full benefit out of this, you will be out of position any time of the day. And you need to think of something else. When I shot someone with having this trait equipped, it didn't stack, like even though it shows on all the weapons. Like this one has the armor penetration, this one has the armor penetration, and this one also has the armor penetration, but it didn't stack on each other. So if it doesn't stack and you actually only get a maximum out of 15%, and that is only true as a damage increase if your target is not already debuffed, right? Then it's in any situation basically worse than improved pedal to the metal, because for this one you also have to fly at full speed. In both cases you fly at full speed to get the full benefit. This one is however 20% damage increase, while this one is minus 15 damage resistance to your enemy, which DRs with other players' betas. So if you have a recluse in there, this one is basically worthless, while this one still gives you 20%. And if you're at a standstill, this one benefits 0, this one benefits 0. So I don't see a point where I would take this ability over this one. And you cannot even use this penetration one for a debuffer, because a recluse will never fly 75 unless you put emergency powder engines in. So possibly for PvP if players like to run emergency powder engines and everything, but on PvE content I just don't see the spot for this. So yeah, I wouldn't suggest going for the traits, to be honest with you guys. Let me find the improved pedal to the metal. Okay, so that's the thing for the ships. The ships generally aren't that bad. The traits they come with aren't that great. The best performance is difficult to really pinpoint. It's probably either the tactical variant, due to the amount of pilot abilities that you can potentially use to increase your damage further. If you want a more stable run, then you put in the science to get the gravity well, or if you want to just deal more damage with your beams, you can go for emergency powder weapons 3. The damage difference will be sort of minuscule. The science variant gets a 4th science console instead of the engineering one, and the engineering version gets 4 engineering instead and 2 science only. So they are pretty similar. Science might have a small edge over the engineering because science consoles contribute a little more. If you get the 5-4 setup and put the assimilated and plasmonic leech in here, you're in pretty good shape. Alright, so let's recap on the chat. Thank God I checked my follower list. I like the way Ryan says, don't really. I don't know. Okay, I typed that question out wrong. I meant I have to know how tall you are. In feet and inches, though, not in meters. As I don't know how tall I am in inches and meters, or in inches and feet, I can't really tell you. I won't be playing Cookie. That's a good decision. I wouldn't play on vacation as well. I have forgotten about these pilot tiers. I will have to revisit that. I'll usually forgot to do all the R&D stuff. I'm not sure I'm following there. What kind of microphone do you use? We hear you so clearly. I have a hard time choosing my microphone for my streams. Well, since you are trying to be a competitor, I should probably get you on the wrong track. This one is called Blue. I have no idea. I'll give you the link later. Just type me an in-game message and I'll send you an in-game mail about that. I honestly don't know right now. Would you run Chemocide? Yes, I would if I had it, and I would actually bother to buy it. I'd probably remove a tag team because I don't really need tag teams that much lately. Especially as we have reciprocity, I'd put at least one Chemocide 1 in. You could potentially also drop the Lieutenant ability here, use a higher rank of Fly Her Apart, could be something. But basically removing this tactical team is a safe bet. This Destabilizing Resonance beam here is an interesting choice which you might not yet be familiar with. This is an ability that came out of the story mission that we played. It is an AoE thing. It targets up to 5 enemies if they are stacked up, basically. You target a beam at an enemy that pulses around it and deals in a 3k radius for 10 seconds some damage, which ignores shields. That is pretty much a good part. And now the more important one is the minus 5 all damage resistance rating per pulse to targets. So it's also an AoE debuff if you slam this into the spheres, which are all gravity wells or something to make them stay clumped up. That's pretty damn good. I really like this ability. Which brings me to the change to Particle Manipulator. This one now is capped at 50% critical chance increase, and now also awards 0.01 critical severity for every point of particle generator skill that you have. Basically what this means is if you have a ship that has low crit H on its own, you actually lose damage. The alt science builds, as previously seen in PvP with only TBRs, party gen consoles, where you don't really go for any tactical consoles, they will actually lose on average, while obviously having a higher maximum crit with the increased crit severity. If you run a ship like the Vesta, which has 4 or 5 tactical and science consoles, I think it's 5 science, 4 tactical, you have a pretty high crit H from those consoles. You have your bridge officers, therefore your crit H is pretty high and you gain some on the critical severity. So this change should not really impact your DPS on DPS-ish builds, but it will make your crits be a little higher. You will just crit a little less frequently. Engineering version can be made to go faster with emergency powder engines. Yes, it can, but I wouldn't really put any emergency powder engines on a PvE build. You just don't need it. The movability the mobility of this ship, if you use this impulse thrust thing, is pretty insane. With the fly her path thing going back, you're really, really mobile. Like, you don't usually get into trouble. Okay, so that is the thing with the new ships. They are available in the C-Store for, I think, 6k for the faction package, 12k for the overall package, and every single ship for 3k Zen. I don't know. I only got the Federation pack to try out the new set powers. I guess I wouldn't really buy all of the ships again. I mean, they are sort of fun to fly. They are good for the visuals. If you really like them, why not? But that is up to you. Alright, so what else do we have to talk about? We have some build requests. But let me just make... how do we do this? Okay. Yeah, I guess we just do the build things to get those out of the way. So someone at the 100k video asked if I have any suggestions to his build. So this is what he linked to me. It's a Galaxy, not a Galaxy, but a Enterprise B variant. He flies dual aux to bat, emergency power to engines, emergency power to weapons 3, emergency power to weapons 1, emergency power to shields 1. This one is emergency power to auxiliary 1. Okay. Now, if you run dual aux to bat and have the duty officers to reduce your cooldowns, you only need one copy of most of the abilities. Therefore, the second emergency power to weapons doesn't really do anything, and as you can only run 2 emergency powers at the same time, I don't really see when you would use emergency power to auxiliary, especially if you then dump everything again with aux to battery. So there are a few things to say to this. First thing is, yes, you could do it. If you really want to, I'd put this one in engineering team and this one probably structure integrity collapse. That way you don't have any wasted slots really. You could also get, for the Lieutenant Commander Tactical, get or as you need the cooldown reduction, you could go for reciprocity with plus threat consoles, for example. That really works well. Or you can usually even do it without plus threat consoles. A reciprocity build is what I usually run on this ship. I don't really like auxiliary to battery. It dumps all of your aux power. That is quite a big thing for Nukara Tier 4 reputation, so this is about 5.5% of your total damage, which is actually something. Your healing powers get reduced, like the hazard emitters doesn't really heal anything anymore. I just wouldn't overdo this. The tractor beam repulsors is not really a thing you want to use on one of these builds when you are starting out. So I would first think about, do you really want to fly this ship? Because there are other possibilities if you don't have the traits and all that is necessary to really make a good build out of this. There are just other ships that allow for these sort of builds way easier, where you don't have this over-engineering side and you get enough tactical slots to do this with. Like the Fleet Assault Cruiser is pretty good, the Odyssey is pretty good. There are just better options. If you like the ship, that's fine, you can make it work, but it will take a little more effort. The arrays are a good idea. There's just one major problem with this: you don't have a kinetic cutting beam in, so you would really want, and you don't want to go for ACC and PV because accuracy overflow doesn't add to fire at will. So you would go for the kinetic cutting beam to get the 2-piece bonus with your assimilated module. Now this is really important. You probably don't need all these RCS accelerators. If you fly correctly, you shouldn't need them. If you need them for the mobility, you didn't plan ahead really. Basically, you know where the enemies will be coming next, and if you have something where you need to get quickly, you have evasive maneuvers, so you don't really need those very often. The ship gets passives that are already defensive, so I wouldn't put in the armor because it DRs too much with the ship's inherent traits and other abilities that you can use. So the science consoles, I mean, the problem is this looks pretty cheap on EC, so I would think that you don't want to use the plasmonic leech because it's too expensive right now. I would, for basically every build in the game right now, you see a plasmonic leech at some point. Then these ones would be flow, or if they aren't flow because you want to run particle generated damage, which you theoretically could with the TBR, then these should be party gen consoles. I don't really see the emitters really being worth it, especially in PvE. Okay, so the tech consoles, your tech consoles on your ship should always be crit age. On Federation ships, there's no doubt about that. There is just two possibilities where you don't want that. There is the Surgical Strikes build, which has insanely high crit age already, so you gain a little more out of your crit D, but as Surgical Strikes is not nearly strong enough to really be a thing in PvE, and since you don't fly a ship that can do that, I don't see a reason to go for crit D consoles. And secondly, there's the beam overload, which is for PvP a thing if you try to one-shot someone. But it is, again, in PvE, that's a wasted slot basically, so really go for crit H consoles. There's no point to put in crit Ds. Okay, so you could go for the more expensive consoles if you have too much money floating around right now. You could go crazy with the Tachyokinetic and the Bioneural Infusion. If you don't feel like throwing away all your money is a good idea right now, you could go for something that is not quite as expensive. The problem is, these ones don't really benefit you right now outside of making your ship turn faster. So basically whatever increases your damage is basically a good thing, right? So if it really comes down to the worst of possibilities, going with the EPS flow could also be an alternative. Otherwise, you need to check on what you have really access to. Reputation consoles are something that you could look into. Yeah, I just would think about this part really. The deflector is the Riemann prototype, Impulse Riemann prototype, and the shield array is Riemann prototype, and a covariant shield array. I wouldn't really do this on a Federation ship because you don't get the Valor console, so your shield healing will suck. Therefore, I usually go with regenerative shields in some way or fashion. That usually means the Dyson shield with its healing proc, with its very high regen rate, is something that I like. And the assimilated 2-piece to help out with hull healing is a very strong, is the strongest defensive set that you can right now get. The Impulse engines with Romulan engines, and not the Riemann but Romulans, which increase their attack patterns, is a good idea, with the assimilated 2-piece of shields and deflector. Or the new 3-piece of the new items that came out with the Iconian set could also be a valid option. The Elite Fleet Reinforced Warp Core with weapons to shields, EPS, and amp. So amp is a good thing, that is good. Weapons to shields is not really what you want because your shield power will be pretty high anyways if you run emergency powered shields, and for amp you only need 75. So what I usually do is I take a weapons to auxiliary build core, and if you ever at some point take this one epic, it gets a weapons to shields on its own, while weapons to shields times 2, if it already had weapons to shields and at epic gains another one, you only get awarded for one as the status bar. So going for this one is safer. You need more augs than shields usually, so I would do this. And on Federation ships, pretty much always I would go for the plasma integrated for the drain resistance. You don't really need the additional power. I used my Galaxy tier 6 with the new console on it that increases all of your maximum powers by 5, and I had 3 subsystems at 130, so, and one at 100. So energy really isn't too much of an issue anymore these days. If you run Aux to bat, obviously you will dump your Aux power, but you will get the other 3 amps anyways all the time. From this, you might be an engineer. Not sure if you are, or if you just didn't select something else. The skill tree itself looks like looks actually not that bad. You don't have the plasmonic leech, so you don't have flow capacitors. That would be something that you would change if you put in flow capacitors, or if you put in the console. The warp core potential usually is fine at 6. You don't really gain much for the last 3 points. Same with weapons performance. Hull plating is only against weapon damage that deals energy damage, like plasma and a proton beam arrays or something, while the armor reinforcements is against kinetic. So I usually have 6 kinetic and 3 for the hull plating. Driver coil makes your ship benefit more from emergency powers, makes your ship go a little faster if you use attack pattern Omega, evasive maneuvers. It makes your power not drop to 5 if you go to full impulse. So I at least usually go for 3 of 6 in this one, and the attack patterns obviously being pretty strong as they increase your attack pattern beta, alpha, omega and everything. So this one I would also increase. Targeting systems, as previously stated, is not really that important anymore with all the accuracy increases that you gain from Intel tree and other abilities right now. Really, you're pretty much fine with 6, really. I mean, even 6 is questionable at this point, I'd say. Traits, you probably don't want to slot ground traits in space. You even have supremacy, so you shouldn't have any power problems. Space reputation, both Nukara abilities, while running Aux to bat, that is not really making much sense, because they depend on how much power you currently have in that thing. So guys, okay, I need someone to tell me on TeamSpeak what's going on there, I guess. Okay, so anyways, if you put in the Nukara thing and drop all of your auxiliary power, you don't gain any benefits from this anymore. So this is not really worth anything for you. You just deleted 2 of your powers. The Omega thing is a minor increase. The shield resistance is a pretty good defensive in PvE. I don't really see someone using this anymore, really. I don't know. These 2 are fine if you drop your auxiliary to battery build. This one usually will be the critical age of precision, and this one will be the okay, so I'll just took care of something in the chat to make it going again. Okay, so the second ability here will usually be the advanced targeting systems, which increases your critical severity. Now this one would be a pretty good defensive with the Nukara defensive setup, and still get you most of the benefits from the offensive stuff. So this is what I usually run on a defensive run. If you want to exchange the last of the defensive abilities, you could go for armor penetration, is sort of fine. If everyone on your team uses it, it still stacks pretty well, which is minus 25. You could also go with one of the other abilities, the new thing that deals AoE damage and clears 1 buff of your enemy on a 2.5% chance at Iconian tier 4. That might be a thing as well. So those are your major options. Alright, so that's for the Enterprise B. Yeah, someone trolling the channel. I can't really take my time right now to take care of that. If he has any real issues, he may contact me at some point. Okay, so then we had another person asking about a fleet patrol escort build, which looks like this. I wonder if this is all really gold or not. And this one is basically a mess. But don't despair yet, there is still hope. Alright, so when you put in arrays, those shoot on a pretty big arc, but the rear arrays cannot shoot to the front, right? Which is why we have the omnidirectionals. You can get a crafted one, and you can get the ancient one if you run anti-proton. Then you could go for dual beam mags up front, or if you don't want to do that, go for arrays and the kinetic cutting beam as always. Kinetic cutting beam should be in all builds. So then you can broadside your enemy. Don't mix the two. That's not really making much sense. You either broadside or you fly towards your target. Okay, so that's why I would decide for one of the parts here. The Lieutenant Commander Universal with TAC is fine. Now, this one is where it gets really strange. I don't know what you're trying to tell me with this build, because you don't have any cannons. So Cannon Rapid Fire 3 Scatter Volley is not really a good thing to do. I would go for dual beam or fired will on this one, just like this. This one could be Attack Pattern Omega 3, and then you can go for Beta. If you now have one Zamok, this is sufficient. This setup here of 2 fired will, 2 attack patterns, then this one could be a Chemocide, for example. You want at least one tag team, but you only want tag team 1, because you don't really gain a benefit from having a higher tag team. So a tag team 2 is basically a wasted slot. And then you can use another tag team if you don't feel safe and don't have reciprocity. Or you could make this another Chemocide. This is now a pretty offensive layout that depends on reciprocity to work and tactical initiative and a Zamok. That's what I was looking for. This one depends on a Zamok to get your attack patterns. If you don't have a Zamok, you might want to go for this setup. Okay. And if you don't have anything, like if you don't have reciprocity or a Zamok and nothing at all and no money, then this would be the cheapest setup that you could possibly fly, which is still pretty good. The Lieutenant Commander Engineering, now you have a auxiliary to battery 2 in here, which doesn't give you anything else but an auxiliary to battery 1, just distributes more power, which you don't really need, as we discussed earlier. So, and there's no point to getting it. You already have all of your abilities. So usually you would go for emergency power to shields 1, emergency power to weapons 3, and then this one could be directed energy modulation. If you are offensive, it could also be auxiliary to structural integrity to give you a good defense, because this ability gives you high damage resistance alongside with the healing. I tend to use this more frequently than the engineering team. Science, polarized hull, makes you immune to tractor beams, so a number 1 of this is fine too. Polarized hull 2 doesn't really give you something different than polarized hull 1. And against Borg, and usually you will die to hull damage. So I would put in a hazard emitter 2 and put in something else into the Anson slot. Science team clears you off science debuffs, that can be fine. Yeah, I have a lot of build requests, which is why I'm a little under, sort of pressure to get this all done. The 2-piece of the core with the ancient Omni would be fine. If you don't have that, go for the fleet plasma integrated. This one actually gives you a little more damage, just a little. It's not too good, it's just a little more. But you lose on the because AMP is not as strong anymore as it was used to, and the 10% is a little more, but you lose the drain resistance, you lose the EPS, you lose the weapons to something. So general package wise, I'd say go for the Fleet Plasma Integrated Core. Deflector, this one has been somewhat interesting. I don't really see a good spot for this anymore. As described earlier, a simulated 2-piece here, Romulan engines, a simulated 2-piece here, Dyson Shield, or the new 3-piece is probably the good options. I wouldn't equip an armor. Go for 2 science consoles, stitch these 2, and you're fine. Science ones could be, they could be Flow or Partigen. You could make this one a Lieutenant Commander Psi if you wanted to, or you could make this one a Destabilizing Resonance Beam 2, and this one the Hazard Emitters. That would be more offensive. That could all be good options. If you have the Science trait, that's always good. Starship Stealth is in PvE pretty much useless. Projectiles is useless, so don't spec any points here. Performances can be at 3 without a big issue. You get a lot of value out of core efficiency if you have a low number behind the slash, which you usually do. So putting in 9 here is usually fine. Inertial dampeners, sensors, graviton generators, I'd all ditch. Those are pretty much PvP abilities. So I'd go for some more armor reinforcements and low Starship performances. 3 in each should be fine. You have the EPS, which is integral to all the builds, so that's fine. I don't really see why you would have 2 last-ditch efforts or whatever this one is called. But yeah, the traits are really expensive. Basically, you would always look for something like Fluidic Cocoon. You would look for Inspirational Leader. You would look for Positive Feedback Loop if you have the science layout that I tried to point out earlier. Also, which I forgot to really mention, is the Beam Barrage change. When you use a upgrading ability to beam upgrade or beam attacks like Fire at Will, you gain the Beam Barrage buff for 30 seconds now instead of 20, which allows you to stack it. It stacks up to 3 times and gives you 2% real damage each time, so it's a total of 6% damage. That's a pretty good thing. Once again, I wouldn't go for defensive space reputation. Usually the value out of this is not really worth it. 4% crit age, 16% crit severity, tactical advantage. You would want the auxiliary to offense, and if you really need a defensive one, go with auxiliary to defense. That's pretty strong too. If you look into doing maximum DPS, this is basically what you're looking at. He also asked whether or not he should go for cannons, and the simple answer to that is no, you shouldn't. At least for DPS. If you want to maximize there, that's not really worth it. Alright. So, no, I banned you because I don't have time to deal with this crap right now. Alright. Okay, we need to take care of some social drama. Yes, it seems we need a few moderators. Okay. I type fast. I type around 100 words per minute usually. Okay, so then someone asked me whether or not that was a known issue of how his cannons misfire for 15 seconds cooldown in the new missions. And I think what he's talking about is the subnucleonic carrier wave, which is the new intel ability that they use that makes you get a random up to 8-second cooldown on abilities. I don't really like the randomness of that one either, but yeah, that is, I think, where that one is coming from. It can be subsystems, so that can trigger on your weapons, I think. Alright, so as we do have the recorded version for this, which I might have to upload because for some reason we have some FPS problems with the stream. I'll just keep talking no matter what. Okay, so that's mostly that. To show a run of the new pilot ships that we recorded today. Let me find that. Okay, so that was today's run. I don't see Hollow. He needs to type something so I can actually respond to him. So this is the new pilot ship, which is the layout I showed earlier. We are on Trouble because all the runs on the regular servers lagged like freaking crazy. This one turns pretty strange as well later on, as you will see. So just to give you a general impression on how this goes, I didn't use my evasives to get over here, but the speed increase of the pilot ships, which is pretty huge. The short burst adds, I think, like 220 speed to how quickly your ship goes already, and it turns pretty fast, as you can see here. I usually get to around 260 when I use the double tap of W to increase its speed. So we just wipe out these spheres here, move over to the other flank, using the short burst again. Still didn't use any evasive maneuvers, and that's really why I'd say there's no reason to go for an emergency power 2 engines on this, because you don't really need it anyways. Like, your ship is so frequently fast that you can even live without evasive maneuvers. So we'll just go over to this stage here, and this is now where the lag strikes us pretty down bad. And you will also see our DPS just stop because the weapons won't really shoot anymore as they should. But I guess that is what we currently have to deal with. Okay, so that's basically what the new ship looks like in action. I'm decently sure that you can reach around 100k with it pretty easily if you don't run into any trouble of lags and have a decent team with you. You need a good GDF going, but it's definitely a ship for the 100k range at this point. Alright, then the new mission, Gateway to, not Gateway, but the Brotherhood Elite Ground mission, where we did a run earlier I think this is the recording of 2 days ago. So you spawn down on this planet. This is generally Kronos. To the left it's the Great Hall. For this direction you go to the exchange. So that's just the general setting. You have this big device in the middle, and then once you use it, you unlock 2 additional devices. There are some random spots for this. Only 2 will be for your mission, but there's a total of like 5, or I think 5 usually, spawn points where they can potentially be. You just have to use the big device in the middle to unlock the lesser ones, and then interact with them within the given time. That's not actually too difficult. If you have successfully interacted, you can progress to the next stage, and all your enemies do despawn. There's just one thing to really note about this mission. As you can see here now, we have progressed to the second stage, which made the wall go away that blocked us. We have a time limitation, we have the assist honor guard, and we have the rescue fire team objectives on this. And you shouldn't really interact with the big console before the optional or mandatory additional goals are done, because if you interact with the big console, more enemies spawn, and therefore you might potentially fail your mission. So if you do this the easy way, you have more than enough time. You just kill all the enemies in the area. You then do the additional goals, and then interact with the big console, interact with the 2 small consoles, and progress to the next stage. So on this one we have to assist the honor guard, which were the guys on the left, which is why I'm on this side. We split up a little, 2 guys on the right,